now Tuesday morning, March 31st, AD 33. The disciples point to the withered fig tree that Jesus had cursed the day before. Jesus gives his disciples a simple lesson from it. Have faith in God. In particular, he says if they have undoubting faith, they can throw even the mountains into the sea. Now, if the disciples had ears to hear, they would recognize that Jesus is talking about more than seemingly magical powers that can curse trees and crumble mountains. No, Jesus is talking about realities much bigger than this. Note that he closes this mini lesson on mountain-moving, undoubting faith by saying, whenever you stand praying, forgive. So your Father who is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. Jesus is reminding them that failing to forgive looms as a bigger obstacle to answered prayer than even a mountain. The disciples will soon face great challenges to their faith and their ability to forgive. Will they remember this withered tree on the road from Bethany? As they approach the holy city, the events from the day before could not have been far from their minds. As Jesus enters the Temple Mount, crowds gather to hear him teach, and the chief priests, scribes, and elders waste no time in making their move. They will try to lay 4 traps to ensnare their adversary. By whose authority, they demand to know, had Jesus carried out his actions the day before? Well, Jesus doesn't take the bait, and instead he turns the tables on them with a question of his own. Was the baptism of John from heaven or from man? Now, if the leaders respond from heaven, the next question is obvious. Then why don't you believe the one about whom John testifies? But if they retort from man, the leaders risk alienating the crowds that hold John in high esteem as a prophet. So Jesus then offers 3 parabolic stories. One about 2 sons, another about murderous tenants, and a third about guests at a wedding feast. All 3 of these stories driving home the point that Israel's religious leaders are rejecting grace and truth in the service of hypocritical self-righteousness. Well, the leaders then try a new tactic. They send Pharisees, who were a Jewish sect known for its zeal for the law, and Herodians, those who are loyal to Herod's dynasty. They send these 2 groups to ask Jesus a question. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, if Jesus answers yes, he shatters people's expectations of him as a Messiah who will overthrow Roman rule. But if Jesus says no, he can be arrested for fomenting revolt. So Jesus evades the either-or dilemma by giving them this answer. The denarius has Caesar's image on it, and as long as Caesar is in power, it is appropriate to pay taxes to him. And we are also to give God the things that are God's, since we are made in God's image. We owe everything, all that we have and all that we are, to him. So Jesus responds, pay your taxes and worship God. Now, after Jesus has silenced the Pharisees and the Herodians, the Sadducees, a 3rd Jewish sect who deny the end-time resurrection of the dead, the Sadducees try to ridicule Jesus' belief in the resurrection by asking a trick question about marriage in heaven. Jesus tells them they do not understand the Scriptures. The Scriptures say that there is no marriage in heaven, but they also don't understand the power of God. God's self-affirmation in Exodus 3 shows that he is God of the living, not of the dead. Like the others, the smirk of the Sadducees turns to marvel as they grow silent by Jesus' response. Now the Pharisees sent forth an expert in the law to question Jesus. Which of God's commands is the greatest? Jesus summarizes his answer in a word: love. Love to God and love for neighbor. But Jesus discerns something different from this questioner, so he commands and implicitly invites him. You are not far from the kingdom of God. Now it's Jesus' turn to initiate some questions with those who are trying to trap him. When he asks them a question about Psalm 110 verse 1, and how the Messiah can be David's Lord, no one was able to answer Jesus a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. So Jesus then launches a lengthy, scathing critique of the scribes and Pharisees, pronouncing 7 woes of judgment upon these hypocrites, calling them blind guides. This full-scale verbal assault removes all doubt concerning Jesus' intentions, Jesus' agenda, and his aims. Jesus has no desire to ally himself with the current leadership. He has come to overthrow their authority. There's no way both sides can survive the escalating conflict. Either Jesus will assume power, or he must die. With another tension-filled day behind them, Jesus and the disciples begin to head back to Bethany. They stop on the Mount of Olives to rest, giving them a wonderful view of Jerusalem as the sun begins to set behind in the west. The disciples marvel at the size and grandeur of these impressive buildings. But Jesus tells them that a day is soon coming when not a single stone will be left upon another. He goes on to explain that his followers will experience increasing persecution and tribulation, leading up to the final day of judgment. But their task is to remain vigilant and persist in the faith. Tuesday is now done, but Friday is coming. This is not the flannel board Jesus that some of us learned as children. This is the real, historical Jesus, who's fully in control as he responds with grace and truth to traps on all sides. Jesus knows what he's doing, and Jesus knows what is coming. Every word and every step is for the fame of his Father's name and the salvation of those who willingly pick up their cross and die with him.